Food businesses are increasingly targeted by private equity and investment firms, but these investments can go quickly awry if food safety assessments are not conducted as part of the due diligence. I'm your Tag Talk host, Lisa Lupo, and today I'm talking with Tag founder and CEO, Dr. David Acheson, about this essential step in food business investment. Hello, David.
Hi, Lisa. Good to chat with you again.
Yes, always good to meet with you. So, David, why is it so critical for a private equity firm to include food safety assessments in its due diligence prior to investing in a food company?
That is a great question, Lisa. And I think the approach to that is that private equity entities are extraordinarily efficient and creative and successful in investing their money, hopefully, for a rapid return on that investment. To me, that is the primary goal: is you invest, it grows, and you then offload it, and in that process, you make money for your investors and those who invest in your funds. I mean, that's the fundamental principle. So the basic expertise of private equity firms, from my experience, having worked with many, is that they are really good at that. They look at opportunities, they look at risk, they look at balance, they look at the market, and they try to make wise decisions. An area where they typically don't have depth is food safety. Well, why does that matter when it comes to spending a lot of money on purchasing a company making food? Well, you'd kind of think it was obvious they need to make the food safely, right? And at a high level,
Right.
a private equity firm would totally say, yeah, of course. But the private equity firms usually do not have that skill set, the depth that one needs to really look at those programs. And I think it's for that reason why they do need to look at it. The second factor is that when you are looking at overall enterprise risk, whole enterprise, with a company that's making food, an enterprise risk assessment will likely have put the safety of that food, if not number one, likely number two, on the overall risks of the company. So it's not just it's a combination of that really starts with recognizing that the safety of the food is probably one of your primary risks to the success and even the survival of the entity that you're looking to purchase. And it sounds melodramatic, but we know that when recalls happen, they can cost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, even if they're small ones. If you make people sick, you're in even more trouble. If you get on the wrong side of regulatory agencies, life not only is difficult and costly, it can put you out of business. And if you really get it wrong, you possibly are facing the Department of Justice. So there's just a lot to keep in mind and a lot to get right. And I think it's smart business for a private equity firm to have that risk, understand that risk. And it may be an acceptable risk, or it may be a risk that they want to actually add a little bit more money to. It's like, yeah, okay, we can fix that because the overall picture is solid and we still want to acquire this business. So high risk, lack of knowledge, and that's exactly where we come in. We get it on both sides.
Okay. So given all that, what are some of the primary areas of risk and red flags that investment firms might encounter?
Well, first off, one begins with, does the company have the fundamental policies and procedures in place to make food safely? I mean, that's a complex space, and some of them are required from a regulatory perspective. Second is, are they actually implementing those policies and procedures in a way that is helping managing those risks? Third, what's the status of the infrastructure when it comes to food safety? Policies may look good and they may be doing their best, but essentially the plant is old and the infrastructure is poor. And there's a real possibility that that some of that infrastructure will fail or create a food safety problem down the road. And then finally, an important area for them to be thinking about is the prior regulatory history and the near misses that an entity may have had. Have they had a regulatory interaction? And whether they're an FDA regulated facility, this is assuming they're US based, are they an FDA regulated facility? Are they a USDA regulated facility? Because those risks and the regulatory requirements are different. We do a lot of work in Canada, so obviously they'd be under CFIA. Those regulatory requirements are a little bit different. In other parts of the world, they're different yet. So that's all sort of putting it together through an assessment that and essentially is part of the due diligence when you're looking to invest in an entity is know what you're getting into. And we're not going to try to persuade a company to not take a pathway or to take a pathway. It's knowledge is power. And if you don't know what the right questions are to ask, and we do, then you're going in with only half a knowledge base to make an optimal decision for the money that you're looking to invest.
So yeah, it sounds like a lot of things to consider, particularly for a company that's not in that space and doesn't have that background. So how does TAG come in to help with all of that?
Well, of course, that's where the tag rubber hits the road, so to speak, where exactly what we do. And I've kind of laid out, why do you want to do it? A little bit, what are you looking for? So how do we work with private equity firms to execute on those first two? Well, first and foremost, we recognize that the private equity world moves at the speed of light.
Okay.
And when these opportunities come up, sometimes they're competitive. Sometimes there's an opportunity for a company to say, well, we've got exclusivity, but it's only good for 2 weeks. We have to sort of put in a letter of intent within that time period, or even put an offer in. So first and foremost, we recognize that world moves fast, and we can move equally as fast to help meet that. So that's a very important point. It's like, well, yeah, we can get in there 6 months from now. That doesn't work. It's got to be literally next week. Often it's next week. Can you get in there next week? Can you get in the week after? And we're very flexible in that regard to be able to do that. We have the resources typically to be able to move things around and to make it a high priority. The second part of the process is typically using a data site of looking at getting the pertinent food safety and regulatory documents uploaded into a site, and we will have a team reviewing those remotely. And sometimes that's a different person or a different couple of people versus the one who gets on site. But they're working very closely together because the two need to fit together. Is the written procedures right? And if they're not, in what way are they not? And is the firm executing on what they have in their policies and procedures? So those two need to synchronize. Sometimes there's a need for us to get into one plant. Sometimes there's a need to get us into 10 in different parts of the country or North America. And typically we have the flexibility to do that. If it's 10, it obviously can take a little longer, but we still, but speed is of the essence. What are we going to deliver? I mean, that's key.
Right.
And what we're going to deliver fundamentally is what we call the red flags. We want the private equity firm to know as soon as we know, either through a policy, a regulatory violation, or an on-site observation, we got a red flag here. And that's not to say it's a deal breaker. It's like you need to know that there's a potential risk here that needs to play into your business's decisions. And that might be a need for imminent capex. Example, you walk into a facility and there's a roof leak going on. It's like, yeah, that's a big problem in a food plant. You got to fix it. Well, what's it going to cost to fix the roof? And the plant have said, oh yeah, we got a little leak, we're controlling it, and we get in there and it's been leaking for 2 months, and there's upside down umbrellas catching the water, and it all seems just fine. Well, it's not. That's a regulatory red flag. So those quote red flags are what we would report, often verbally. It's like we'll get on a phone call, a conference call, say, okay, there's 1, 2, there's 5, there's 10. You need to know what they are. That's then followed up by a written summary or a written report of all of that. So there's something in writing, and that usually comes within a matter of days after the initial conversation. And then, depending where the company private equity firm goes, they might walk away for reasons we've helped them unearth, or they might walk away for other business reasons. But let's assume they don't, and they get in there. Then there's sort of chapter 2. We've got to know the investment opportunity, the target. We've got to know the policies and procedures. We've got to know where some of their challenges are. And we often then will work with the private equity firm to resolve or rectify those issues. So it's not just, here's a list of headaches. It's like we'll come right in there with the analgesics to help solve the headache and put the fires out and help them manage that risk going forward, which obviously we like to do, and we like to be able to provide that service to the private equity firm. So it isn't just the initial due diligence, and often the deals don't work out. It's not because of things we've found; it's for other reasons. Price isn't right. They don't think it's whatever it might be.
Right.
But if assuming that it does, then there might be a little to-do list to figure out, which we can help with. And then on an ongoing basis, TAG provides 24/7 crisis support, so that even when the unexpected happens, which unfortunately in our business of food safety it does, we're there to help navigate that as well, with both the entity that's been the target of this due diligence, as well as with the private equity firm, who again may not be particularly conversant with having conversations with public health and regulatory agencies. We are, and we just become an extension of their team. So it has to be deep, it has to be thorough, and it has to be fast, and it has to provide leverageable risk-based information for the private equity company to help them make the right business decision, which is fundamentally why they're in this in the first place.
Well, as I said, it's a lot to consider in this space. Particularly, can be very different from other investments the firm may be making. So getting a few experts in there sounds like a great idea. So,
we think so.
mhm.
And we do quite a bit of this. We'd love to do more. And frankly, we enjoy working with private equity firms. They set high standards, and we look to meet those standards. So,
Right.
yeah, good opportunities.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, for your insights on the critical aspect of food safety and due diligence for a food company. And we want to thank the viewers, as always, for joining TAG Talks on current and impactful industry trends and events. And to stay tuned on all things food safety and public health, click subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new videos, and then click Insights to subscribe to our weekly articles. Thank you again.
Thank you.